Hello CTU, this is your Katekno Tony again, and for today's content we will be talking about my family's practices at home when it comes to purchasing, receiving, and storing food items. We will also talk about the right and wrong practices that we may be doing, and hopefully we can come up with some corrective actions in relation to food microbiology. Now let's talk about those practices first for the perishable items. Perishable items are the red meats, poultry, seafoods, fruits, and vegetables. In purchasing meat, we usually do it very early in the morning when there is a bounty supply of meat. Same goes with fish, fruits, and vegetables, because early in the morning that's when the supply really gets into the market. Now, in the process of purchasing, we always check for any signs of deterioration, like the smell, the color. For the meat, for example, we are very particular with the color. When it's really very pale, then that's really not a good sign that it is a fresh meat. I mean, it has to be pinkish, it has to be somewhat reddish, and it should not have any foul odor. The same goes with purchasing fish or any seafood. We always check if the eyes are still bright, the skin's not damaged, the gills are red, and we also check the odor. Now for the fruits and vegetables, of course, we mainly base our judgment with its color, and of course, how fresh the vegetables and fruits look. We also check if there are no bruises or any damage. And those are the purchasing practices that we do for the perishable items. Now for the receiving part, these items are really not delivered. We bought it personally from the market, so I think the receiving part is really not that applicable for perishable items. Now for the storing part, well, obviously most of us, if we have refrigerators at home, we would put the meat and fish products in the freezer. While the eggs, there's also a compartment for the egg and separate compartments for the vegetables and fruits. Though for our fruits, we don't usually put it inside the fridge, especially if it's banana or something of that sort. Apples, oranges are usually put there though, inside the refrigerator. Now for the right or wrong practices, well, basically the refrigerator is the best place where perishable items should be stored. However, the wrong practice, or a sort of malpractice that we do really, is that we don't properly separate the meats from the fish when we put it in the freezer. So sometimes we just put it in the plastic and stuck it all right there without any proper segregation. And that's one thing that I observed is a factor of food contamination. So for the corrective action, perhaps what we can do is we can put each type of meat, fish, put them separately in different containers before putting it inside the freezer. Now let's move on to our practices for staple food items or staple foods. So those basically are the groceries and canned goods. So for the purchasing practices, what we always do is we check for the expiration date. And that's what we are really particular about, because we had this experience a few years back, where we bought a milk without checking the expiration date, and we consumed it. It resulted to stomach ache, where my younger brother was even brought to the hospital because of a severe stomach ache. And we strongly believe, and we were even advised by the doctor, that that expired milk might be the reason of that illness or of the stomach ache that we experienced. Now for the receiving part, unlike the perishable items, we had this one experience during the lockdown, where it has become rampant on Facebook, the Pasabay service. So we availed the service one time for purchasing groceries because no one really was determined to go to the market and buy groceries because of the difficulty in transportation. So we availed this service, and during delivery, of course, we checked first the quantity of the items and for physical damages. And of course, we waited for the person to leave first before we went and checked the expiration date as we are used to. And that's basically, the only experience we have for, the receiving part of these kinds of food or items. Now for the storage, we have this food cabinet at home where we put, the groceries, the canned goods, or any packed items. And what we are particular about with the storage for groceries and, canned goods is that there should be no direct sunlight, because we know that temperature could damage, the quality of those foods or of those items. Now for the storing part, I personally think that there's nothing much to worry about in storing these staple food, groceries and canned goods, because again, they are packed, they are covered, like physically covered by cans or either plastics, right? So I can't think of any malpractice that we do at home. Though we don't really sort out the groceries, well, we just put it inside the cabinet, though we arranged it and all, but there's nothing much to really worry about the storing of these staple food. And with that said, I can't think of any, corrective actions that we can apply for the procedures involved in buying staple food. Now, for the contract items, so these basically are coffee, milk, noodles, ice cream, breads, and oil. Well, at first we have this misconception that those are part of the staple food, like, the groceries, because we purchase them along with the groceries and we basically do the same process. We check for the expiration date or any damage with its packaging. So basically the same, purchasing practice with the staple food. Now for the receiving part, well, some or most of those items that I've mentioned were bought one time along with the groceries that I mentioned earlier during the lockdown. So same thing, with the receiving, we checked the quantity, and right after the person left, then we checked the quality of the products in terms of its expiration date. Now for the storing part, I would say that these items differ slightly from the groceries or the canned goods, because for example, the milk and the coffee, if there are times that we buy them in bulk, like in big sachets or in big packs, then of course after opening it, we will transfer it to containers and just put them in its designated places, somewhere near our dining area. And that's basically how we store it. And observing as well, the temperature precautions, so no direct sunlight and all that. So for the raw and dry practices, I can't see any big issues really for these items. The same with the staple food, because they are meant to have longer shelf life, and just as long as we put them in their proper containers and there's no direct sunlight, then it should be good to go. So I can't think of any malpractice that we do at home. Well, at least that is for me. I am not sure with you guys, but that's how we do it. And that's basically everything from me, guys. I just shared to you our family's practices when it comes to purchasing, receiving, storing food items in relation to food microbiology. So I hope you learned something and enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Thank you. Bye.